If the product's already developed and is in production and being sold, but you've actually got the opportunity of a new application, and you've got to get round, say, legislation for it to be usable in the new application.
Yeah.
Say, for use in the marine industry or something like that. Is that an acceptable cost for R&D?
I'll come in on that one.
Yeah,
it's applying exactly the same rules again. So you have to say that because there's no reason why legislative or regulatory constraints don't lead to R&D, but has that regulatory change led you to having to undertake new R&D? So has that meant you've had to change your product or develop your application, etc., and it's led to new technological uncertainty? So you go through the same mindset again to see whether it's created a new bubble of R&D, if you like, which you then articulate in the same way for your claim. So it could do if it leads you to have technological challenges.
Couldn't you argue that it's completing your R&D in the original development
Well, you'd have to
for the application of it to be acceptable in the new environment?
But it could be, or it could be that you're just proving a commercial application or an application of it for non-commercial purposes. But so it could be either of those two things. It depends on whether you've resolved your uncertainty before you've got to that stage, or whether you still have some technological uncertainty about what it can and can't do, and what the difficulties are.
And if you're having to prove it to the authorities that it is capable of doing it.
But if you've already resolved that yourselves, then I would say you had more of an issue there.
So I mean, let's take should try and take an example. Let's say going from a piece of electronic equipment to a deep subsea application for that, where you've now a completely different operating environment. You have no knowledge of whether your proposed sealing systems might or might not work. You've certainly got uncertainty under those circumstances.
Yeah.
Does that uncertainty relate to a technological uncertainty, or is it merely an application issue? How would you handle that as a team of advisors?
Can I give you a different example?
Okay. We might come back to that.
I'll give you an example of one that we've had. We work with a company that's making a claim, and they develop different compounds, different chemical compounds. Now, part of that development is to service the German market. And the Germans changed their regulatory requirements, and they said that you now can no longer use this particular material in any of your compounds for this particular application. And so the company therefore had to look at its formulations and say, now that I can't use that compound, is it easy to just adapt it slightly by tweaking it such that we can get it within the regulations, in which case that's what we'll do? Or do we have to actually revisit the whole formulation process? Because actually by taking that one particular material out, it's no longer actually doing the function properly that it's intended for. And so we've had to have those discussions with them to actually get to grips with what exactly that regulatory change has meant for them. And to a large degree it's actually come back to, well, they've had to go through the R&D again.
What you're looking for is more scientific or technological uncertainty. So if we were in a dialogue now and talking about R&D, I'd be saying to you, so is it difficult? Did it cause more problems that you had to use that in a different environment? And what were those problems? Then we drill down to whether they were scientific or technological, and we talk about what we did to try to overcome them. So that's the route that you'd go down. You'd go through that discussion process, try to identify those uncertainties, because that's what you present.
I mean, we have a bit of a foresight and hindsight issue here. Is you're going into a new domain, you can take a punt on what you think might work, but you have no real certainty that that solution is going to work. So you have an exploration, and the extent to which you hit problems that you need to resolve probably decides on whether it does or does not fall into the R&D domain. So the thing is to be aware at the point you onset to identify where you might expect problems to be and where your uncertainties on the routes you're taking would be to start the clock running potentially.